Hi everybody, I'm Dr Nadine Hamilton from Love Your Pet, Love Your Vet. Welcome to another episode in our mini-series of Thriving and Surviving in the Veterinary Profession. Today I have another super special guest, Dr Phil Richmond. He's a veterinarian from just north of Tampa in Florida in the US. We actually met at the VMX conference in Florida earlier this year. And unbeknownst, I think, to both of us, Phil, we didn't realise that we were both part of the Fox 35 Orlando segment that Phil recorded, and I had a little bit of input in that as well. So we connected at the conference and then obviously reconnected after we realised that we were both part of that show. Phil, I'm so excited to have you here today and talking to us, and particularly talking about the science of positive emotion and gratitude. I know you do a lot of positive psychology aspects, which is so close to my own heart. And obviously talking about gratitude, we were just talking offline a little bit this morning, just about gratitude, you know, and sort of things that have happened over here in Australia, and, you know, like how grateful I've been, you know, the last couple of days for things that have happened, and, you know, just getting some really positive awareness out there for our vet professionals. So welcome. I'm going to stop talking for a moment and hand over, because I know you'll be able to explain your background and your qualifications, and also a bit of your story about getting into the industry and everything. And then we're sort of going to have a little bit of a chat. We've got a few slides to show, and just keeping it nice and casual. So thank you for being part of this. And
wonderful. Yeah, thanks, Nadine. And it's so one, I mean, I think we both would agree, just no coincidences. So, you know, this, you know, that all of that came together the way that it did. So I graduated from vet school in 2006 in Florida. And, you know, one of the things that a lot of us deal with, and I know you're very familiar with it, Nadine, is just, you know, we have these, you know, this underlying perfectionism and the imposter syndrome and all, you know, all these things. And, you know, for me, and I don't think my underlying story is too much different than most people that are veterinarians, but early on, I had a number of adverse childhood events, you know, as far as childhood trauma that happened to me. And in high school, I found that alcohol helped self-medicate that. And that worked for me for, you know, a very long time. And, you know, and just kind of treated those feelings. And what was confusing for me is that even though in hindsight, you know, if I were to take an assessment, I had an alcohol use disorder probably in my mid to early 20s. But I was in vet school, and I thought, well, how can this be? I'm performing, you know, one, I got into vet school. Two, I'm performing at a fairly high level. So I must not have a problem. And, you know, and yet it's, you know, I'm having to drink, you know, I'm drinking more often, and then the stress of, you know, veterinary medicine comes on. And so what happened to me is in 2008, after I graduated and was in practice, that those tools no longer worked for me. And I was suicidal. And I was very grateful because I worked with one of my colleagues, recognized what was going on with me, and actually was able to get me help. That I was scared because of the stigma, because of, you know, the feeling of quote unquote weakness in our profession, you know, that I'm seeking help for this, that it was going to come on my license. So I'm very grateful someone stepped in and, you know, and helped save my life. So what happened is I ended up getting into 12-step. So I went into a treatment facility. I got into 12-step recovery. And what I found was the tools that I was given in 12-step recovery helped me learn how to deal with beliefs that I had, and, you know, and kind of the squirrel cage, you know, that I had going 100 miles an hour. And I began to love what I did again. You know, and the Merck study that came out in 2017, really quick, that in the US, 24% of veterinarians under the age of 35 would not recommend this profession. That's heartbreaking.
It is.
You know, we spend 8 to 10 years of our life, and more than that, of this is going to make me happy. This is my meaning and purpose. This is what's going to complete me. Then we do it, and then we get out into the real world, and then meh.
Yep.
And I didn't have any tools to deal with all of that. So I was very grateful. 12 step recovery helped save my life, gave me a level of well-being and just peace, serenity that I hadn't had. And so that turns into 10 years later after that, I started to find out about positive psychology. And so what it really was basically the science, the evidence-based medicine, if you will, behind gratitude, behind forgiveness, behind, acceptance, and all of these principles that we learn, not just in 12-step recovery, but any type of, I want to say moral teaching, but that sort of thing. But here's the science behind it. I was like, this is it. Like this is really a way to help try to deliver some of these tools, and, and also talking about emotional intelligence and a lot of these things. So I did get certified in applied positive psychology and resilience training, which resilience training was basically exactly what I went through in the 12 steps.
Okay, that's interesting.
And worded in a different way, but those principles and the end result was all the same.
Still the same.
And I got that result. I got that result of peace, and things can happen. And now I feel like a kid when I go to work. I'm able to be present, and just, be in the middle of a surgery and go, this is amazing. Like, this is cool. Like, this is great. And getting down on the, all the stuff that I thought being a veterinarian was when I was 5, I now, because of the tools that I was learned and was given, were able to enjoy being a veterinarian again. So.
I mean, and that's phenomenal, really, to see. I mean, and I know, the full story is on the Fox 35 interview. And for anybody that's watching, if you haven't watched it, there is a link on our website page to that. And I will say it is very confronting to watch that, and I think I had goosebumps the whole time I was watching it, because I hadn't obviously seen your interview, to see that happening, and when I did my interview, I had no idea that was what was going on, as well. To see that, I was like, oh my gosh, and it breaks my heart to see those stories, but also the gratitude that I have, like knowing that one of your co-workers, took the time out and asked you, like, are you okay? Something's not right. And it just reinforces a lot of the stuff that I try to teach people, to just reach out to other people. That's why we need to reduce the stigma and make it okay to have those conversations, because it sounds like that conversation saved your life, and was a contributing factor to that, to hear of your story, and again going from like merely surviving in the industry to now thriving in the industry, which is kind of the whole theme. But what a difference, obviously, from a positive psychology perspective, which I know the followers who have heard me speak know I rant on about it all the time, but to actually see that in action, I think is absolutely brilliant, and so grateful that you were obviously open to hearing that person's support, you were to receiving, and being open and not sort of just going, no, I'm okay, and pushing it aside. That again is another key component of this. So, I guess they just planted the seed, and then you did the work. Well,
so, and let me be clear about the story, is that person they stepped outside, and there were programs that were in place if I was in trouble to get me in. So yes, she did talk to me, but she was able to get me into a program that is designed to protect medical professionals, because we all go through things, and to say, hey, you need help, you need treatment. This does not mean you're a bad person. This does not mean you're a moral failure. This means you have a brain disease. Let's treat it, and let's get you back to doing what you love. And I am eternally grateful for that those programs exist. So
absolutely. So, and again, it reinforces you're still human. I think obviously being a psychologist, people have this perception, oh, your life must be perfect, you mustn't have any issues or problems at all. It's like, I'm still human. I still need that support as well. We all do. We all need to balance things out. Just some of us are, have different tools and strategies at our disposal than others. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So I know you've got a lot of really interesting stuff. I know we sort of talked about it offline with some of the stuff that you wanted to share, I guess, and things that you're so passionate about that you felt that have really helped you to get back on track and to be able to start, I guess, in positive psychology term, living the life you love, living the good life,
right.
And how. And I guess it's probably important to emphasize too that it doesn't mean that everything is just absolutely brilliant and you don't have your ups and downs. It just means you're better equipped to be able to deal with those ups and downs as and when they happen.
Yeah. And so when what you just said really leads into positive psychology, the birth, if you will, of positive psychology back in '98, which was at the time, and not that I'm speaking, I feel awkward telling, saying this to you. I know all the, but that before that time, it was, after World War II was very much, how do we treat pathology? How are we able to get somebody who is, to use a simplistic scale, if you will, a -10 to a +10, someone who's running at a -6, what tools can we use to perhaps get them to baseline, and that is a huge improvement using those tools.
Definitely.
But what do we do, but the absence of those things, the absence of disease doesn't mean that we're well, I think is one of the things that really struck me. And so what do we do for someone who's running at a 2, who's existing, going to work, maybe doesn't have pathology, but is just meh, is this all there is? And how can we raise the level to, and get us where we're running kind of at a 6, where I'm not woohoo, but if something happens, it doesn't crush me. And that's where I feel that this is really a lot, the tools of positive psychology and 12-step recovery. And what I see in other people that go through it is that it just raises our baseline up to where, generally speaking, I can use these tools to have a pretty good outlook on things. And it's not, it's not a bowl of cherries all the time, but that when I get, when I get hit, I've got the psychological capital to invest to bring myself up. Right.
It's that sense of well-being, which is what it's all about, isn't it? It's not about happiness, because that means different things to different people. It's just that sense of well-being and contentment that, I'm okay with where things are at the moment, and how we adapt to that.
And what I'd like to do, if we can, let me share.
Yeah, you share your screen.
Yeah, let me share this.
I know you've got some funny things there that I'm like, I know everyone will like some of these.
So we're not going to be doing the whole presentation, but if we look at this slide right here, so this is work from Sonia Lubomirsky, who's a very well-known positive psychologist. But this study was on about 2,000 identical twins. So we were able to see that happiness, about 50% of our quote unquote happiness, subjective well-being, however you want to describe it, because again, it is very subjective, is that there is a genetic component to it, but that potentially 10%, which is what we tend to focus on, of the external circumstances account for our happiness, but we have control potentially. I mean, if we're baseline or above, not talking about mental illness, but if we're here, we have a locus of control. There are things that we can do to raise this up. And that was very empowering to me, that I really learned that with some of these tools of gratitude and, and this. And so,
absolutely.
I love that we get focused on the external stuff, which I in a nerd way called this dragon decagon. So the 10%, but that's
okay.
But and also a Game of Thrones fan. So, we get focused on the client, the schedules, the spouse, what's happening with our dogs, what's happening with our student loans. And I'm not implying that those things are not important, but we have more control over them, than
we start buying into it. Yeah. We buy into it all. Yeah.
And so it ends up being, our 40% is essentially, it's what we think, what we do, and what we feel. And, you know, if we can reach that, you know, we can kind of be, you know, kind of have that cool theme music in the background and, you know, and kind of walk out of here. And this is the feeling, almost wearing, not necessarily as cool as this, but kind of wearing the world around me like a loose garment. It's a phrase that I've heard that I really, you know, that really resonates with me, is that I don't get sucked in. If I'm practicing these things, I have the ability to not get sucked in to that downward spiral of, you know, negative emotion. Is that I can see where it's going and kind of like, okay, you're going down this, you know, let's use some of these tools. Let's bring it back up a little bit, and then, you know, let that slide off. So,
absolutely. And I think, like, I know, like, a lot of the people watching would have heard a lot of the stuff, whether they've been to like a workshop that I've presented, or, you know, I've been speaking somewhere, or like different webinars and that we've done, you know, and talking about just the very basics of positive psychology with that PERMA theory, you know, those 5 pillars of well-being, you know, with the positive emotion, you know, and positive emotion can be those things like joy or serenity and gratitude or love and all of those things that just make you just feel, you know, that sense of, if you want to call it happiness, if that's what it means to you, that's fine. You know, but just that sense of just like, oh, this is good. This is like bliss. And that could be watching a sunrise or a sunset, or just joy, you know, as we were saying before, you know, just some conversations that I've had over the last few days with some of my vet friends, you know, it's sort of like, oh my gosh, this is really heartwarming to hear some of these things, you know, which is a far cry from some of the other conversations, you know, a few weeks ago, you know, obviously it all relates to stuff that's in the media that is sort of like, you know, I find infuriating and, you know, frustrating and really upsetting to just see that shift. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, you don't realize how emotional, and it's not all about how emotional you are, but just how, when you feel that sense of gratitude, how it can be emotional, you know, and that's what I've really noticed as well with myself, just like, oh my gosh, you know, just that appreciation of, you know, of those good things happening. So it's, a really good thing.
And you know, what you just said really, so what came to me is one of the things that I've been given is, if a client says, oh, thank you so much for, you know, for saving my dog, or whatever it is, whatever action it is that we did, what is our normal oh, okay, thank you, you know, and we just blow it off, is just, and to not just, you know, close the exam door. Because now what I try to do is just, if I'm walking, is close the door, look that client in the eye, and just, you know, thank you, I you know, I
really feel it,
you know, is that and it doesn't, and it's not waving the flag, because that's what I thought in a messed up way, is that, you know, I should just, any bad thing I overreacted to, and the good stuff is just what it should be, because I should be the best, you know, or I should be, you know, at X level, and, you know, someone's saying good things
or it's just
to me about the job that
like with the imposter syndrome. The good things happen because it's just fluke, or because someone else was involved. It was none of your doing, but all the failures are your own fault.
Yes. So either way, but to really just be mindful, and you know, we get into the, probably someone on your webinar has talked about, you know, that mindfulness and being present with that. And, you know, as I sit here with us and just thinking about how we came together, I mean, it's just, it's, man, it, you know, it gives you goosebumps. And, you know, so anyhow, it's allowing those things to come in and set up camp here for a moment and allow me to sit with those good feelings. And it's not that we're la 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 happy all the time, but you know, and
realistic.
Realistic with it. And there's that ratio, which, you know, if we get into it, is a little, you know, has been debunked a little bit, but the general aspect of a 3-to-1 ratio of positive emotion to negative emotion, because we never have negative emotion, I'm never going to get anything done. You know, if I'm not feeling a little anxiety for a project, you know, there are some good evolutionary reasons why we have negative emotions, but if I stay in those, then
it's what we do with them. Absolutely. It's how long we do that. Yeah, and I thought, Barbara's work was really interesting. Like, I actually have a book on positivity, and I talk about that positivity ratio. And it's, I think, I mean, and I've even used it myself. I know there's another theory, like in the EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. They talk about a 5-to-1 ratio, which is sort of interesting with, you know, positive beliefs, negative beliefs. You know, so again, it's outweighing it, because we're all going to have that, you know, something not pleasant happen. And I think it's interesting, you know, like in practice where, you know, we talk about those difficult clients that are coming in, and I've had, you know, vets say to me, but in reality, we don't really get that many. But because it is such a negative experience for so many people, you know, if someone's come in and again, it's, you know, a rude remark that's upset you or offended you, or just somebody that's, you know, been nasty or complained, whatever it may be, that's what we hold on to, because, you know, we're wired for looking into, you know, worst case scenario. That's our survival mechanism, without sort of going, okay, how easy it is to hold on to the negative, but what about all the positive? What about all that good stuff that's there, that's waiting to be unwrapped? We just got to dig beneath all that psychological smog to get it. And it's just as valid. The good stuff and the positive emotions are just as valid. And it can be, that can tip the scales between having a good day and having a really bad day. You know, how we're going to process that information.
And seeing that, trying to see that through as unbiased a lens as we can. It's like, yes, this is that a good thing that happened? Yes. You know, if I'm discounting it, then I'm, you know, I have to realize that I'm doing, you know, be self-aware that I'm doing that. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's such power. I mean, I absolutely love, I think anyone who knows me knows it. I think positive psychology is one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. But again, you know, because the philosophy behind it, I mean, it's evidence-based, it works, you know, and I like to use it as a supplement to acceptance and commitment therapy, with helping with those unhelpful thoughts, those unhelpful feelings. And, you know, as you were talking, and we're talking about, you know, when you're saying, when, you know, if a client comes through and says, thank you, rather than brushing it off, like sitting with that. And in acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, we talk about just sit with the feeling. You know, if something negative's going on, just sit with it, make room for it. But we can use that in a positive way. Like, let's sit with this feeling. Let's just allow it to happen. It's sort of like, not flourishing, like savoring is the thing that I'm using, you know, and just savoring the moment. You know, it's sort of like we would when we're eating that first chocolate biscuit, or for some people, you know, it's that first sip of coffee in the morning, or putting your feet up after the end of a really hectic long day, or when you lie in bed at night, you're like, oh, this is just bliss. We just want to savor that moment, you know, and we know we've got the science behind all of that.
And if we don't keep that, you know, that radar out for, you know, looking for the things that are good in life, and it just seems like, oh, well, that the person, they just have this positive outlook, or they just have, and it's all there. It's just, it's amazing the power that we have to reframe things. There's you know, the old parable, you know, of the Chinese farmer that, you know, that says good, you know, good or bad, hard to say, you know, some event happens. For instance, 11 years ago for me, or what, you know, I went into a treatment facility. It's the end of my life. That's, you know, not for real, but I almost got to the end of my, and what happened is that gave me the greatest gift that, you know, I could have ever had. And I would not have been able to frame it that way. And just seeing negative things, because we want to blow this, especially when, you know, if we're talking about veterinary medicine, is I made a mistake versus I am a mistake, you know, and then the imposter syndrome. Of course I made a mistake because I shouldn't be doing this job anyway. I don't even know why I do. And then I'm just going to walk out. Right. So if we can throttle that down and say, okay, what would I, and this gets into, you know, Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion as well. You know, if my friend who's a veterinarian came to me and said had all these facts, and what would they say to me?
Exactly.
You know, what would I say to a close friend that just went through this? And why not? Why can't we be like that to ourselves?
Exactly. Because we're so caught up in this, you know, and sometimes we have to sort of step out of that and just observe what's going on, you know, just be the observer in the situation and go, okay, you know, and it's a technique we use in counseling. What would you say if this was somebody else that said that to you? You know, what would you say? Because it's like we can look at it from a different perspective when it's not us, because we're emotionally attached to what's going on and we can't see the wood for the trees because we're, you know, it's caught up in here. We need to be able to just detach from it and then look at it a little bit more clearly.
Absolutely.
Because I think, and I think we've probably talked about this like before offline with, I guess just that, like, was it a mindset shift for you that made the difference? Like how was it during the 12-step recovery program that allowed you to shift that mindset, you know, because obviously, you know, things were in a dark place, you know, and we don't need to elaborate on that, but, you know, things were in a dark place, but then there was some shift. Like, were you ready to make some changes? Like, did you realize something wasn't right and you were open to that help? And that's sort of the difference, because I know, I'm just mindful that there's probably people watching that are in that dark place now, you know, like I can't see a way out of this. How do we do? Do we either, you know, leave the profession, you know, and obviously we've got, you know, really high attrition rate in the profession. We, you know, there's global shortages of vets, you know, happening everywhere. That it's sort of like, how did you get, that shift, you know, and, or is there anything that you could suggest for people who may be in this place again and can't see how things are possibly going to improve?
Right. So one thing I do want to touch on that you mentioned is as far as what we also know is that in our profession in veterinarian, well, we have most data on physicians, but the preliminary data that we have from the newest Merck study kind of mirrors what we see in physicians, is that 10 to 12% of us at some point in our career are going to have an alcohol or substance use disorder. So not 1 in 100, not 1 in 1,000, that's 1 in 10. And that is, you know, now that I'm involved and, you know, that's really what we see. But why don't we have more people trying to seek help and trying to find other answers for a different type of coping mechanism? Shame, fear, irrational fear, you know, all these things. So one, you're not alone. Two, you're not weak. There's some, you know, there's just some issues with our brain chemistry. Going to what changed my mind. So through the 12 steps, one is I had to accept that I needed help, that I couldn't do this on my own. And and I had to be really beaten down mentally, you know, or just emotionally and spiritually, to be at a point where, yes, I can't do this anymore. And if I go back, I'm not going to make it. We don't all get to that point, but it made me much more open to listening to suggestion, if you will. The process of the 12 steps, what's very interesting is it's very much like cognitive behavioral therapy, in that the fourth step, you do what's called a moral inventory. So basically I go through, or one who's in a 12-step program, you go through your whole life. You take all these relationships that you had, and resentments and basically beliefs, you know, that you have on how another person acted. And what I find is when I go through the process that's in this book, is that probably 95% of those things that I believed that someone else did to me, I made up. You know, that I had an irrational belief about something. And what did I do? I took action on that irrational belief.
We believed our thoughts.
Right. Yes. Right. So it helps us challenge the end of that is, okay, how do I turn around and see what my part in that relationship was? And so you do that about 60, 70 times. You know, I start to realize there's a pattern here, and it's not, again, it's on paper. So, and I'm open to seeing this, and I've got somebody who isn't trying to sell me anything. I've got a sponsor, somebody who's walked through this, and my sponsor happened to have been a veterinarian, which was wonderful.
Wow.
But, right. And so, but going through that is, hey, okay, if I'm in my second sponsor, who happened to be a general surgeon, but it doesn't matter what you do, but he would say, if I'm not the problem, there is no solution. And so I would see that my thinking was my problem. Okay, now what do I do? And so that's where the process of forgiveness and going through an amends process and trying to right as best I could, right the wrongs of my past, but also forgiving those people that may have, that may have legitimately done something to me that I played a part in it, because I mostly wasn't an innocent victim in those things. But you said mindset. I just wanted to share another, I'll be as quick with this one as I can.
One of these. I liked your little picture that you showed me before as well. I think people might, with the little orange.
Yes, well, right. So
I think
this is our.
I think people could probably relate to that.
So we're just chronically in a state of sympathetic nervous system attack there.
Absolutely.
So this is from a book called The Happiness Advantage. That Sean Atcher, he's a positive psychologist from Harvard, and he talks about this, where he goes into, he was going in and giving these talks basically on positive psychology and happiness during the stock market crash, during the crash of 08. And so he would go into this room and he would ask people, he says, okay, you're in a bank. There's about 35 people in line and people, working at the bank. Someone comes in with a gun, fires, and you get hit in the arm. And that's what happens. How do you feel about that? And he said, probably 70% of the people would be like, are you kidding me? Like, Sean, like out of 35 people in that bank, I'm the one, is it, and he would say, is it good? Are you lucky or not? And they were like, how am I lucky, Sean? Like, I got shot in the arm. Like I could have gone to 30 different banks in the area, And then what was interesting is he said, one investment banker said, I guarantee there was somebody in that room that deserved to get shot more than I did. And he jokingly said, after that statement, I'm not sure that that's true, but let's go on.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's that the event is the event. The event is the event. 30% of the people said, Sean, are you kidding? Like, in what happens in the US, are you like, a man comes into a bank with a gun and fires, and the only thing that happens is I get a flesh wound. I'm lucky. That everyone in there is lucky. Like, I'm very blessed. And again, the event is the event. It's how we have the power to frame that any way that we want. And that is, I mean, that is very, very powerful. So
see, my mindset would be, thank goodness it was only my arm and wasn't any other vital organ.
Yes. Right.
But
or whatever. Right. However we say that, but if we go, I mean, not to say that we're not the victim, but that this happened to me, the universe made this happen to me, then that's, how can we be well and at peace in this world? So it's just a very, very powerful story.
And that mindset, just is so important. But it's like when you were talking before, with a lot of the CBT stuff, and again, how our thoughts, we tend to believe whatever's going on in our head because no one tells us. We don't have to believe all of our thoughts. They're not always true. They're not always helpful. They're not always accurate. And just because we're thinking it doesn't make it real. But when you're caught up in that moment, it's very hard to get out of that, and sort of see that difference. Yeah,
absolutely. It's funny you say that. I have a big sign in my office that says, don't believe everything you think.
Exactly. I love it. It's so true. It's so true. Yep, absolutely. And so how do you use like positive psychology now, and I guess how has that helped you to really start thriving, I guess, and that's not to say, as we said, that's not to say we don't all have our ups and downs, but for the most part, there's more ups than downs. And when we do have the downs, we're not getting caught up in it, and catastrophizing and ruminating over it. How have you found that that's helped you, I guess, like obviously personally, but also professionally, like in your career? Has it had a positive flow on effect, pardon the pun or pun intended, with your colleagues as well?
So absolutely, and we'll just pop right back to here is that how does positive psychology help us become better veterinary professionals? That is not what my goal was to change, to just stop living the way that I was living. What happened to me professionally was a side benefit of what I learned in 12-step recovery and then in positive psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So with what we know, and going back to the orange, is that probably, I don't know, 200, 300 times a day, my adrenal gland is getting, Mrs. Jones is on the phone. She's upset, or we've got a hit by car is on the way in.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 technicians that are, coming with questions all at the same time. All of these things my body perceives as a threat. And then I just start to shut down. I get that, the old amygdala hijack and, and
Yep.
I'm just emotion, and I don't do well. I get short, I get angry. And that's not the kind of person that I want to be. What I found is that the thing that worked best for me, and I do want to say this, because this to me was one of the best bits of information that I got from any study, is that, so we know that positive emotion, so negative emotion or stress narrows our focus. Like we lose probably about 40% of our cognitive ability, because why would we need to start thinking about all these beautiful things going on if a tiger is chasing us? We just need to take off. Positive emotion, though, the things that you spoke of when we started, so serenity, joy, just contentment, all of these emotions actually allow our thoughts to broaden. Well, what we have is we have a study that was done. I love how they induced positive emotion. All they did was they had a little candy bag. They didn't allow the doctors, the internists in the study, to eat the candy. It was just the gift of the candy.
Oh my gosh, it's like dangling that carrot.
That's it. Right. It's just, hey, you look like, here, have this candy. That's it. So,
oh my gosh, I just got thoughts of, you probably don't have Tim Tam biscuits over there, but we have Tim Tam biscuits here. They're divine. And I just don't buy them, but whenever I'm talking and giving examples, it always talks about Tim Tams. I'm just thinking of just waving that packet of Tim Tams in front of someone's face, like, oh yeah.
Right. So what was funny, so they did this, and what they found is that the physicians were able to not have tunnel vision on the case study. And so they had considerably less what's called anchoring. So they were able to have flexible thinking. If they were going one way with a differential diagnosis, they were able to turn around, and what happened is they were 20% faster and had more accurate diagnoses. That is, and that, so just that, if that's the only reason we're going to teach positive psychology to our, positive emotion to our students, just that is beautiful. But all the wonderful side benefits that we see to it, is just there. And so, how do we make this happen? Well, we can just chat about that, because I think I was getting off on the gratitude part there.
No, that's totally fine.
But just that, I mean, you get some of these things that are just these aha moments, and that study was really, really one of them that hit me between the eyes, because,
Absolutely. And I mean, it's no secret, as I've said, like with the positive psychology, to see it actually in action and the benefits. Like I enjoy like listening to your stuff here on positive psychology, because you've done a lot of research as well, and sort of gone a lot deeper into it, with some of the areas. The focus I had was, my doctoral research was probably a little bit more about what it is, positive psychology, not necessarily more the applied psychology, which is, where we're seeing it. And I think just to see it brought together, and particularly the relevance of, this evidence-based intervention, strategy, whatever you want to call it, application, to see how it's being used within this profession. And particularly, just reading that study there on the clinical reasoning is really, I just think it's very encouraging to see that. And it's the thing that I love about it is that we're focusing on these positive things, which enhances our well-being. If we have all of those 5 pillars happening, And I think, and you said it earlier before about like your meaning and purpose, you know, and as soon as I hear that, I think of, you know, the PERMA concept. And, you know, for anyone who's not familiar, you know, the positive emotions, the P, the E, engagement, relationships. So, you know, positive relationships. Have you got it there?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say,
And then V is more fitness, nutrition, sleep, all the things we were talking about.
All the other subjects that we're talking about in our webinar series, which is awesome, bringing everything. And I think, like, for me, you know, that meaning and that achievement, you know, not just necessarily achieving things, you know, and saying I have to go and do a PhD or I have to be an astronaut and fly to the moon or anything massive, just simple things like getting our washing hung out and dried, or mowing our lawns, or for some people getting out of bed each day, you know, and just getting showered and dressed and eating a meal. But the meaning and purpose, that was probably something when I had my private practice and was working with general population before I started, you know, working exclusively with the vet industry. That was the one that was missing. In the bulk of the clients when I, you know, went through the PERMA exercises, that meaning and purpose. And I think, you know, I try to reinforce to people, you know, that are in this industry, if your meaning and purpose isn't in the vet industry, that's okay. You know, just because you might be working in this industry now, and obviously, you know, we want to have people here, but the meaning and purpose could be something completely different. It could be my meaning is and purpose is to plant as many trees as we can and get, you know, a lot of the environmental or climate things happening, or, you know, it could be so completely different, and that's okay. It doesn't have to relate to the profession that we're in. If we can have our meaning and purpose from the profession we're in, then that's fantastic. But, you know, it's sort of like one exercise and one way that I use that is to ask people, what would you do for free? Sorry. Oh, hello, we got a little visitor.
Yeah,
they found you in your basement, Bill. You got discovered.
I feel bad. He came in earlier and I was like, no. And then I was like, oh no.
He's like, I really need to go to bed because it's obviously really late there in the evening for you. I expect it's probably nearly the middle of the night for you, your time. And
not too bad.
We were joking about it's the only place you can go in the house where you don't get discovered in the basement.
That's right. Yes, I am in my garage gym. So that's if anybody was looking at why.
But it's great because it's the fitness. But that's what we're saying. It's the fitness sort of stuff happening. We can see your step in the background and practicing what you preach. And, you know, we were talking offline as well just about that adaptability. You know, we sort of adapt, but, you know, you've got to go wherever you can go and get that peace and quiet. But with the meaning and purpose is, you know, what's something you would do for free? You know, out of the goodness of your heart, what is something that you would do? You know, and like for me, like helping people and helping animals, that's where I knew that I definitely doing what I'm doing now, that's taken a lot of, you know, decades to get to find what my meaning and purpose is. And, you know, certainly I have my moments, and certainly sometimes I'm like, oh, am I making a difference? You know, am I actually having an impact? You know, because you don't always get to see the benefits. Like, you know, when you have your patients come in, you might not see them for 12 months, you know, and you go, I wonder if they're okay. Did they recover all right? Or they've moved, you know, they've moved region or whatever. So you don't always get that follow-up. You don't always, or get the gratitude and the thanks. And I know it's not always about that, but, you know, we all, I guess, need to feel acknowledged. We all need to be able to receive the giving as well as the receiving. And I think as helpers, you know, and those of us who work in the helping profession and the healing profession, there is a lot of giving, you know, and that's what we do, but we also need to balance that with receiving, you know, and that's where I find that meaning and purpose that comes in. Again, you know, this might just be a career for some people. It might not be a life purpose, and that's okay. But it's, we need to find, you know, well, what is our meaning? What is behind that? Right.
Oh, and so it just made me think about an experience that I had. I just love storytelling, but I had a client that came in, and her husband is in end stage heart failure and needs a heart transplant. And this was maybe last year or the year before. And she brought her dog in. Her husband was at home, and she's just, you know, been dealing with his illness, things going on with her, the dog's allergies, and she brought him in And she looked at me, and I can just, and this is where, you know, just us being able to be present in that relationship with that client can be just as rewarding as what we're doing with that pet. And she, you know, I let her know that her pooch looked fine. And I said, what's going on? And she just broke down. She's like, I just brought him in here because I just needed to get out of the house. And I was able to just sit there and hold, you know, and hug her. And, you know, she wept and was just very grateful to, you know, be able to come in and do that. And those are the, you know, those types of relationships are something that I don't think that it's one of the special parts about being a veterinarian is that people will open up to us in ways that sometimes is, you know, is even a little uncomfortable if we're not ready for it, but that it's those, there's a level of trust that we have with people that, you know, they just are able to be open and honest with us.
And I think they see that compassion that you give to the animals, so they automatically know that, yes, you are compassionate. And I know there's a downside because people play on that with the emotional blackmail and all of that. But, you know, focusing on the positive side of things, you know, I had goosebumps as you were saying that because, you know, I'm sort of thinking, you know, you're a big softie. And I absolutely, you know, love that. And I know, you know, you obviously have to be mindful of your own, you know, making sure that you're not, you know, being too compassionate as in, you know, leading to compassion fatigue. But I just love that because, you know, that speaks ounces and speaks volumes to me that, you know, that lady trusted you. You know, she knew that she was in a safe place with you, you know, and you've created that environment and that safe space, you know, and I just think that is so wonderful. And what a difference, you know, she could have gone to anyone, but the fact that she came to you, you know, what does that say that, you know, like, I don't know if she had family or, you know, anyone else she could go to, but it was sort of like, this was her safe place. She knew that she would get the support that she needed as well. Absolutely. You know, it's, because I guess you do have those conversations. I mean, I've had, you know, the most amazing conversations with some of our vets that are probably nothing at all to do with our animals. It's like, you know, because especially when you're spending a lot of time there and you really form those positive relationships, you know, which is tapping into the R in the PERMA theory, that it's not necessary that every single relationship we have is positive, but we want to be able to nourish and nurture those relationships that we do have, and to see that kind of connection, you know, like it makes me feel really nice to hear those kind of stories that somebody, you know, really valued you. And it wasn't necessarily about her pet's care. It was about, that was the excuse, you know, that was the tip of the iceberg. The underneath the story, you know, the real issue, not the presenting issue, was around she needed somebody to nurture, I guess, and show her some compassion and care. And that was what you were able to do. You know, and I just think that's awesome to do that. And again, it enhances those positive relationships. And it's those sorts of moments too, you know, with the gratitude, you know, and sitting in that moment. And, you know, so for the cranky client that might have been in there beforehand, you know, and then you get somebody like that, because typically we would focus on the negative one and we brush aside the positive, you know, and that's what I love with positive psychology. It is looking, you know, and being mindful and like sitting with these good things that are happening because they're all around us, you know, and I know we've been talking about gratitude, but simple things like being grateful for the fact that we've got fresh drinking water. You know, because there's plenty of people that don't have that we've got like knives and forks to eat our food. We don't have to eat with our fingers and, you know, like that cross-contamination, you know, we've got, I was going to say, you know, we've got like actual toilets and toilet paper. And I know that, you know, that's the big joke of 2020 at the moment with the toilet paper, but for the most part, but we have those basic essentials because there are a lot of places, you know, and countries around the world where they don't have that. You know, and like we take it for granted. And I think it was a bit of a lesson to all of us, you know, with the 2020 toilet paper crisis, how much we take things for granted and how much we need to be grateful. I don't think people have ever been so grateful for toilet paper back on the shelves as they are at the moment. But, you know, gratitude doesn't have to be these amazing things like, oh my gosh, you know, I helped deliver a baby and I got the cord around its neck and I saved its life. It doesn't have to be these big mind-blowing things. It can be, you know, just everyday things. There's always something to be grateful for.
and it's being able to be observant to those things around us.
Exactly.
And to be able to frame that.
Yes.
And we'll pop over again where, the beautiful thing about gratitude is that it allows us to be open to more positive emotion.
Yep.
And when
Absolutely.
we do have that gratitude, and what I would say for me, what I found early on is that nothing changed my perception of the world around me faster than gratitude. Is that, and I had to believe in it, and I have an underlying belief of just being grateful for, the things that I have. And so I get in a crappy, mood like everybody else.
Everyone does. Yep.
But I can use this and I have to do it. I mean, that's the, it's also, just because I know it up here doesn't mean, or if I'm not using these things, I'm not going to get, if I just have them sitting up here, I'm not going to get any fitter.
Yeah.
And if I know these tools and I don't use them, then I'm not going to get the benefit of them. But when I sit down, I can sit down and there are a few things that we can do as far as gratitude practices.
Three good things. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Right. and that for me, and this is what's beautiful about gratitude is you just find it's been shown to work very well if you switch up the practices, that we can get very stale, very much like, if we do one exercise all the time, it just loses.
You run out, like the three good things. You run out. If you're doing it, 3 good things about me, about a week, you're done. I say unless you're a narcissist, then you just keep going. But generally, we run out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so for me, when I do my gratitude list, is that I will sit down and I will write things. And so I used to do, okay, I'm just going to do 10. And now I just say, I write things down until I feel differently. And for me now, it takes probably about 8 to 12, and then I'm like, yes, I'm very, I'm very grateful for these things that I have. And one of these, so I'd love to tell this story too. So we can go through really quick. So hunt the good stuff is what we were just talking about, is just finding, seeing, I'm in my garage right now. I'm looking at a refrigerator, an old refrigerator. Well, that refrigerator was back when we had Hurricane Irma, or when we had the hurricane, one of our refrigerators went out. My in-laws went and they bought us this used refrigerator and got it. And it, and just the love that was done, and I know that's my father-in-law. I know that's that's his love language is doing. And so I can look at that and go, that's the energy behind that. I can appreciate that. But I had to learn how to do that. I didn't automatically think that way.
Exactly. Yep.
So there's another, and one more story I'd love to tell really quick is this runaway gratitude train is that we had a dog that was we have a client that is really a clinic favorite. We really, really love this woman. And unfortunately her ex-husband left this dog who we've worked with, we worked with for a long time, left him out. They had 5 dogs and he left Max outside. He forgot. Well, in Florida, it gets very hot. Max came in, his temperature was about 107, 108, which is, we're getting close to brain damage. He's lateral. She rushes him in and we just start going to work. And so I realized there's a special way why this client came to us that has to do with some of the things that I do outside of work. And I was sitting and I was watching our technicians just do everything they do. And then it just allowed me, I thought about how that client, and this is all happening pretty quickly because I'm, also calling out treatments and this type of thing. But to just sit with that and for a moment being able to be mindful, and in this client came to us because of something beautiful that happened to me. She trusts us, gets the dog here. I'm watching all of our technicians just do these things and thinking about where they all were when they started with us, and now they're doing things without me. They're on it, doing all progression. These, and then and they're getting these machines and like the machine, and our monitoring equipment we didn't have when I had gotten to the practice, and I was thinking about how we were able to get all and just seeing everything, and we brought him back. And I mean, and it had a beautiful
Wow.
ending too, is that we
I love a happy ending. I'm glad it did, because I probably would have
cried. Oh yes, it did. But to just see, you know, if I just went to we saved him, then I could discount. But it's being able to be mindful and present of all of those
every step along the way.
Of everything that had to come together for that dog's life to be saved in that moment was just, it was overwhelming. I mean, it just was beautiful.
That is amazing.
And that is something that I never had the capabilities of doing before before I learned these tools. And so just being able to be open to that.
Definitely. And I think, you know, like sort of overriding all of this really is, you know, coming back to mindfulness. You know, we really have to be mindful. We have to be in the moment to be able to notice all of these things, you know, and following all of these things. So is that on your wall in your clinic?
Yes. So
I love it.
we, and what's also interesting is that our practice, when we get very busy, it can also kind of gauge where we're at with how often this is getting filled. Is that when we're getting stressed, it's almost, I didn't realize it until well after this picture was taken, is that there's a long stretch where we weren't adding things to the book. And it made me look, you know, I was looking, you know, kind of had some self-awareness of where I was at, awareness of where the clinic was at. And it's just, it not only is it beautiful when we're writing things and being able to see what the staff is, you know, and myself and the other doctors
they've written that about their patient, like patients coming in, like with someone else is coming back. So that's their little like gratitude board.
Right. Hey, this, and it's to be mindful of those little good things that happened in the day and write.
That we brush aside, we take no notice of ordinarily. I love it. Absolutely love it. So, wow. So, gosh. And I know we're pretty much bang on the hour. It's like, oh my gosh!
I wanted to sneak that one in there because
I love it. I love it. No, I love it because I think they're just practical things that we can do. They're easy. They don't cost anything to do. You know, gratitude costs nothing. We can do that. Each of us can do that every single day. You know, like buying into those positive emotions and being mindful enough to do it. And I guess making the time, because I know, you know, there's, you know, likely people out there saying, oh yes, but you know, I'm a psychologist. I don't know what it's like to work in a vet clinic and how busy it is. And you don't have time for that. Absolutely right. But it's like, you know, just because I'm not in a clinic, it doesn't mean that I'm not super duper busy as well. But I love that you are in a clinic, you know, you are a vet, you've got your team there working with you of, you know, vet professionals, and you're making the time to do it, you know. So it's sort of like, if you can do it and look at what a difference it has made to your life, you know. So to see the whole positive psychology that, you know, I rant on about all the time, it's my favorite aspect of psychology, because it's so positive. It looks at that well-being, and I love that's just my philosophy is around that side of things. So to see it applied and to see what a positive impact that it's had on your life and the difference, and obviously that you are here to be able to talk about that and share your story with people when it, you know, could have had a completely different ending. And I'm grateful that it didn't, and I'm sure those around you are grateful. Hopefully you're grateful as well that it didn't, to see, you know, this is part of your meaning and purpose, you know, to sort of show others that are in the profession that you get it, you know what it's like and what's happening in there. So it's not just me talking theoretically about how to apply it. This is the practical way of applying it, you know, and I'm sure that there's tons and tons of other ways that you apply it. But I mean, I know it would be, you know, obviously you have your stress in your clinic as well, but it must be an awesome place to work because you're taking the lead and, you know, you're leading the way and setting this as a positive example to your team, you know, and what a massive difference that can make within a workplace, you know, to have just a positive, engaging leader. It just, it makes such a big difference. So, do you have any words in closing or anything like that that you'd want to share with anybody? Or
I would say one that you're not alone, and that this profession really can be everything we thought it was when we were a kid. You know, it's just, we need the tools. That it's happening in university settings. I'm actually on a committee at University of Florida for us to do that. But if we can get these tools to the students to be able to have these when you get out under practice and be able to sidestep the perils, if you will, of practice. That this is still a beautiful and rewarding and profession. I wouldn't want to do anything else. And I love the passion of the mental health professionals that have taken up, the shield and sword to protect us. And so I'm very grateful for what you're doing.
No, thank you.
Yeah, friends.
My pleasure. Well, we're here
US.
we're here to help, aren't we? That's the thing. We're all in it together, and I think it's obviously. I mean, and people know my story with how close to my heart the vet profession is, and obviously how passionate I am about suicide prevention. Obviously, being the survivor of a family who have suicided, family of suicide attempts within my own family, as well as those that completed. I've lost colleagues, I've lost friends as well, suicide, murder, suicide. We've sort of had it all pretty much. So, to be able to just take that, as traumatic as it is, but it's like, this is where it's so important to show people that it doesn't have to be that way. There is, the ability to be able to really thrive after these sorts of things. So, merely just, we don't want to just be surviving, we want to be thriving as well as surviving, and doing this, whatever our profession is, wherever we're working. So, so I really appreciate you sharing your time with us, sharing your story as well. If you want to watch that interview as well, for anybody there that's watching the Fox 35 Orlando story, I think it was about, when did it come out? Maybe March, I think. I know it was a little while after VMX, that it came out, but there's still a link on our website. I think it's under our interviews section, podcasts and interviews. There's a link there for anyone who wants to watch it and sort of see the full story, and obviously get I guess a more of a picture of where Phil has been, and just what a difference it has been, using positive psychology and that positive emotion and the gratitude, and how different, it can make your life as a veterinary professional. So thank you so much again. I know it is super, super late at night, in your little basement there where you did get discovered as well. But for the most part, it's your own little private little sanctuary there as well, which is awesome. So I hope everybody has enjoyed this episode. If you do have any questions, you can pop them in the comment section here if you're following this from our Facebook page as well. If there are questions there that we need to get to Dr. Phil, I can, find those out. I can get in touch with Phil directly, and see what responses that we've got there as well, to try and answer any questions if they're things that I'm not able to answer directly. So thank you again, Phil, for sharing your story and spending this time with us and talking more about positive psychology. And I will see everybody on the next webinar. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and I hope you're really enjoying this series as well. So until now, it's bye for now, until the next time. See you, everyone.